Ape Escape is one of the oldest PlayStation franchises, but it never received much spotlight, even in its prime, before eventually fading away. However, when Astro Bot on PS5 heavily referenced the Ape Escape series, it reignited interest among core gamers. Considering that many new PlayStation fans were unfamiliar with the IP, it raised the question of whether Ape Escape is now worth revisiting or catching up on. If you ask me, the answer is yes, but with important caveats. On the surface, it looks like your typical 90s platformer, with the main twist being that your collectibles are monkeys on the run. Yet thanks to a pretty unique core gameplay concept, it's more than just another mascot platforming game. In a way, the original Ape Escape was the DualShock answer to Mario 64, where Nintendo's revolutionary N64 platformer was all about showing off the power of the analog stick. Ape Escape said, "Look what we can do with two of them." Few games took the concept of control sticks this literally. You control your character with the left analog stick as usual, but on the right stick you take manual control of multiple equipment pieces. You have to rotate a radar to track down the monkeys, for example, or wield a lightsaber in the direction you move your stick, circle the control stick to rotate a propeller or a hula hoop, and so on. Beyond that, L3 and R3 will make the character either descend into water or crawl. They used every button opportunity on the controller. While the focus is on relatively small platforming sandboxes and parkours, switching between your different tools to solve puzzles gives it a touch of action-adventure similar to the Zelda games of the time. Now beware, it will feel unusual to control. That's a natural part of such an experimental game angle. However, I'm not gonna lie, there also are legit problems and irritations with the game design, no matter how you look at them. Surprisingly enough, I'd argue that the camera isn't among its problems. Recalibrating the perspective behind the character with the shoulder button remains a decent solution, and the D-pad gives you free camera control. Perhaps my biggest irritation comes down to personal preference, because aiming controls are inverted, and because these things weren't common at the time, you can't change that option, despite first-person aiming being an important part of the gameplay loop. Additionally, while many mechanics work as intended, sometimes the controls are overbearing for no reason. This is especially true during the unintuitive swimming sections, which appear in almost all levels, where you need to control the character using both the shoulder buttons and the stick simultaneously. Occasionally, you also get to control vehicles with both sticks concurrently, which never feels comfortable. But the game makes up for its flaws with its presentation, in my opinion much more than its sequels. Because above all, the original Ape Escape encapsulates late 90s gaming in the best ways possible. For one, the catchy soundtrack embraces the upbeat techno, drum and bass, and jungle style of the time, genres that the industry has moved away from, but still have a lot of appeal and give the game that extra eccentric feel. Beyond that, in a good emulator, Ape Escape still has a pleasing cartoon and anime aesthetic. Similar to Crash Bandicoot, the strong colors and cartoony design outshine the low polygon count and the wobbly textures of the PS1. Not to mention that the apes in particular come with simple but expressive animations, which give them a surprising amount of character. And the most important feature, the act of catching an ape, is never not satisfying thanks to the controller rumble and animations. Because of its time travel plot, the game also never runs out of interesting and wacky backdrops in its tight 5-hour campaign. It would be easy to point out some of the experimental aspects of Ape Escape and say it hasn't aged well. But if you're not completely put off by old 3D games, or if you're a fan of 90s aesthetics, it remains an engaging time capsule worth revisiting.